Welcome back to Small Caps. My name's Kerry Stevenson. I've invited Mike Dunbar back. He's the Managing Director of M24 Mamba Exploration. ASX code is M24. And Mike and I last spoke, as many of you will know, in June, early June of this year, on what they were doing with their winter and their southern projects. They've got four areas over there in Western Australia, in the East Kimberley, the Ashburton, Gascoyne area, Darling Range and Great Southern projects, and made an announcement on Friday about their rare earths in the Gascoyne region. So Mike, thanks for coming back and sharing some news. What you been doing since I spoke to you in June?
We've been doing it's been winter for a start. So the fortunate thing we've got is we've got projects to work in the winter months. So we've actually been up in the Kimberley, undertaken a large soil sampling program on our East Kimberley project, been up there mapping and identifying some very high grade rock chip areas in the Copper Flats project in the Kimberley. About to start up in the Kimberley very late in the season, but we're doing it very soon. Large airborne EM survey up there as well. And on top of all of that, we've done some reprocessing of radiometric data in the Ashburton Gascoyne region, which many of your listeners will know is a reasonably hot area at the moment, and getting hotter, as you mentioned, by the day, for rare earths. And announced on Friday that we've identified at least 8 outcropping thorium anomalies, which are the anomalies similar to what Hastings have got on their project that they are developing, their rare earth project they're developing, and what Dreadnought has found and drilled. And similarly, Kingfisher Mining has also found in the Gascoyne. So we've been pretty busy, to be honest, working on our winter projects. Our summer projects, our southern projects, they're on hold until it stops raining, and it's raining down in Perth again now. But so those will be on hold for another couple of months or month and a half. But the other ones in the East Kimberley and the Ashburton's been really our focus. It's paying off, actually. We've had a lot of positive progress. The market started to wake up to it, but it's early days.
Yeah, it is early days. Can we go top to bottom, if you wouldn't mind, Mike, just to update the market? So you mentioned the East Kimberley Copper Flats. You're doing some soil sampling there. Where's that at?
Yeah, so the soil sampling up in the East Kimberley, we've got a number of targets in the East Kimberley or Copper Flats project. We've done some reprocessing of broad airborne EM surveys, identified some bedrock conductors. I should have mentioned that as well, actually. Some bedrock conductors up in the East Kimberley. We've then got another target style of mineralisation that we've covered with soil sampling. We're about halfway through getting the analysis done on that. We're using a handheld XRF to fast track the results for that area, so we can really make sure we're getting maximum bang for our buck. And we're halfway through that. I announced that, I think it was on Tuesday last week, that we've processed about half of those samples, already identified a 4.5 kilometre long copper anomaly, which is really quite interesting. Early days, but again, that's open along strike. And from there, we now need to continue and finish that soil sampling analysis that we're doing. And then the handheld XRF is very, very useful for pathfinder elements, but you won't get some elements with it, or they won't be easy or identifiable with XRF. For example, you won't get silver because it's a ppm level of detection, but you do get the large elements. So we get copper quite accurately. And so what we do is screen all of our samples with the handheld XRF. We can get good anomaly identification with that, and then those higher or highly anomalous zones will get full wet chemistry in a lab done as well. So that's a good way of fast tracking that, so we can get maximum bang for our buck there. So that's up there.
Just on that, because you said before a 4.5 kilometre long copper anomaly.
Yeah.
What does that mean, though? I mean, it's early days. You're doing soil sampling. What's your confidence of, Mike? You've been in this industry for a while. Sorry about that, but you know.
Oh, great. The grey hair must be showing through. Thanks, Kerry.
Oh, he started when he was 2, ladies and gentlemen. But I just want to know, it is early days. What is it about this project that you think could lead to a potential discovery of sorts?
Scale, fundamentally scale. Excuse me. We've got multiple styles of target that we're conceptual targets we're working to on copper flats. There's one particular stratigraphic horizon that stretches for 50 kilometres that we can trace for 50 kilometres. Along that 50 kilometres of stratigraphy, there are some zones of very, very high grade copper, up to 30% copper mineralisation. What we've done is we've gone back to grassroots fundamental exploration. What's causing those to pop out on that particular horizon? And we've identified there are some large basinal, it's a sedimentary basin, that area, and there's some large structures running through those targets and go into the basin. So and under sedimentary cover, which can host the mineralisation. So hence the soil sampling we've done to the west. But those structures are quite key for large copper silver discoveries and mines around the world. So what we're now doing is going to airborne EM to identify if there are conductive horizons associated with those structures, which could be associated with massive sulfide ore body mineralisation. Now, early days, but that's the process we need to go through. It takes time, and we're deliberately being very methodical with that project because the scale of it. It's a very large area. I mentioned to somebody else just the other day that project stretches, depending on where you are or where your listeners are, it stretches from the northernmost suburb of Perth to Mandurah, east-west. In scale, it's massive.
Okay, I'm trying to get a visual for that one, but not big.
Okay. Sydney Harbour Bridge to Newcastle.
Oh, okay, that's massive.
A reasonable sized package. Now, how do we target something that large, or a system that large? Being very methodical, being very scientifically driven, and having an exploration model, conceptual exploration model that allows us to very carefully target that size scale of system. And it is a big system. So we've done that at a high level and identified a particular area where we want to fly more than 2,000 line kilometres of airborne EM. Now that for a junior of our size is a very large investment, but that's the kind of scale of exploration you need to do to find these large projects and these large scale assets. So that's what we're doing. We start flying that in October, and that's going to be quite an investment for us. But that.
And how deep will that go? That airborne EM?
Yeah, it's a fixed wing plane system, because you can't use a helicopter for that size system, or you can, but you'll spend in the order of, if you did that with a helicopter, it will cost close to $700,000-800,000. I'm not going to spend that much money on that system. So we're using a fixed wing system. It will cost us about $250,000. So a very large investment, but that covers a large area. So a large area, they'll come in and test the far northeastern portion of that, the Northern Territory border, for about, I think the lines are about 40 kilometres long. So a big system. And to depth, those ones, depending on the geology it's hitting, you should be able to see down to about 300 metres vertically, thereabouts, to see if there is a conductive horizon there. It depends a lot on a lot of other aspects, and I won't bore all the listeners with what can drive the depth measuring capacity of airborne systems, but yeah, certainly 200-300 metres comfortably. And then from there, we can then start to assess how we attack those conductors that I believe we will see, because we've already seen some, and we'll get a better handle on what's controlling it. So yeah, exciting time up there.
When's that happening?
Next month.
Okay, so that's happening
Well,
next month. And what's the, so when do you think you'll get the news back from that airborne EM?
Yeah, internally, we will get daily reports as to how we're going, and we'll actually modify the program on the fly, so to speak, pardon the pun. But the geophysical group who's doing it, they take about 5 weeks to process that. So I'd say in November, late November, we'll get the results of that, which will lead to the field program. We will not be going up into the Kimberley December, January, February. It's brutal. It's brutal, it is. And again, that's why we've got the summer and winter projects. But over the summer months, we can process that data. We'll let the market know, obviously, as soon as we've got it. But we'll process the data, assess it, and decide how we're going to test those particular targets, because it will take time, but we are going to do this quite deliberately, quite methodically. And so it's an exciting time for us to get that.
And I said before that you've been in this business for a while. What does Mike Dunbar like about this area? What's your bones? What's your waters telling you?
Look, it's an area that hasn't been well explored at all, and that's if you look at all of our projects. Why have we got our projects, and why have we selected our projects? And because we're not going to follow the bouncing ball that most juniors will follow. And what I mean by that is most juniors, exploration juniors in Western Australia, will go into the Yilgarn, try and get some projects near Kalgoorlie, because that's what they think the market wants to see. And sometimes it is.
Yeah.
But if you look at the really large discoveries and the really big discoveries that people have made in the last 20 years, they've not been greenfield discoveries this year. They haven't been in the Yilgarn, which surprises a lot of people. But if you look at the big gold discoveries, for example, I've worked in gold a fair bit, but you've got Tropicana is outside the Yilgarn. Gruyere is on the edge of the Yilgarn. You've got Karlawinda outside. You've got Hemi outside. So the big systems, the really big systems, are outside the Yilgarn. Similarly, on the base metal side, Julimar on the edge of the Yilgarn. Nova Bollinger outside, Winu outside, and Savannah North, all outside the Yilgarn. So all our projects are deliberately outside, because that's where I believe the next big discoveries will be made. Now, we're looking for them. I'm not saying we're guaranteed we're going to find them, but that's what we need to be doing. And to some degree, be brave, go and do something different to what others are doing, and go into areas that are mineralised. We know that from the historical work that's been done in the region, with a fresh set of eyes, and explore those areas. And that's why I like the Kimberley area and the Copper Flats in particular. That's why I like the Gascoyne prospect and the Gascoyne project that we've got. And I suppose pivoting this conversation a little bit to the Gascoyne, it's the part of Western Australia that people flew over. It's not in the Yilgarn, it's not in the Pilbara. That's the bit you fly over to get to where you want to go to.
Wow.
But I've long held the view that part, the mineral endowment of the Gascoyne has been massively underestimated. And it's really pleasing to see that the potential of that system and that region, rather, is starting to be realised. You've got Hastings, for example, developing a rare earth project just down the road from our project in the Ashburton Gascoyne. You've got some great discovery by Dreadnought, just south of our project as well, and Kingfisher Kingfisher Mining, rather, are also in the area and have made some really interesting rare earth discoveries. So the area is now starting to be, the Gascoyne Ashburton region is starting to be recognised more widely as a mineral province that has not been well explored. That's why we've got that project, because we identified back when we formed the company and when I got all the projects together for the company, we identified the area we wanted, and we acquired it back in September of 2020 and put it into the company when we listed in February of 2021. So very deliberate move to be outside the Yilgarn, looking for these areas that have been either forgotten or overlooked in terms of mineral endowment. And I think that's where the next big discoveries are going to be made. So that's why I want to be in those areas.
And I think it's you mentioned Hastings rare earths and also Dreadnought. It's interesting you're in that area as well, whether or not the markets recognise that fully, but I think they are, because you've got these rare earth targets. How did you come across them? Are they outcropping? What work have you done? And why are you so excited about Gascoyne?
Look, the Gascoyne region is just an area I've worked there for quite a while. Yeah. And it's just an area that hasn't been properly explored for a long while. So it's a really interesting area to be working. So the project itself and the Gascoyne Ashburton project that we've got, about 610 square kilometres, so a reasonable sized package. I'm not going to try and put that into perspective from Sydney Harbour Bridge because, to be honest, I haven't actually got the size analogy.
It's a bloody big lot of ground you've got there.
We've got a large tenement package. It's not a postage stamp. We identified that Hastings, Dreadnought, and Kingfisher all have thorium radiometric signatures over their deposits, and they've all got what a particular signature, a thorium radiometric signature over their deposits. So we've had our geophysicist reprocess all of the government data, which is gridded to 80 square metre grids over our entire package up there, and identified at least 8 targets that are outcropping, that have very similar signature to Dreadnought's projects, to Kingfisher's, and similar to Hastings, slightly different to Hastings, but similar to Hastings. And so we've done that straight away, and now identified these targets, and we'll now go up there and with our handheld XRF and analyse those areas.
Mike, I just want to understand, and I'm sure there are people out there that are thinking the same thing. You talked about thorium anomalies. What does that mean in terms of the rare earth elements?
Excuse me. Look, there's a radiometric signature that everything emits, and it's thorium, radium, and potassium, and the thorium in particular, the rare earth elements generally do emit slightly or weakly radioactive type signatures. Now, we're talking very, very subtle. It's not the kind of thing that people need to start getting scared about. When you mention radioactivity, people get scared. They shouldn't. They shouldn't. They do, but they do. But no, very subtle features, and thorium in particular in this region is where the particular signature that these deposits are emitting. What we know about the radiometrics is it does not see deep into the crust. It's not like magnetics or EM, as we're flying up at copper flats that we'll see 200-300 meters in. It measures effectively the radiometric signature of the surface. So we know these anomalies are sticking out of the ground. So we know that we're going to be able to go straight up to these targets, and the geo team that I've got will go and kick the rocks and be able to look at the rocks at surface and get an understanding of what they are straight away. So we're not talking undercover, these targets, and we've got at least 8 of them. If we process and modelled it slightly differently, there are more, but we're saying 8 to start with. Targets that are sticking out of the ground that we need to go and assess and look at. So when are they going up to do that? Yeah, our handheld XRFs have been used to finish the analysis of our copper flat soil samples first, and so in about 2 weeks they should be up on site doing that. And the good thing about the handheld XRF is you get a very quick analysis. It's almost instant. It takes 60 seconds to get a reading, but it's very quick to get an understanding of what you've got. So we'll be able to do that very quickly, and effectively allows you to in real time direct and change your exploration strategies and where you're targeting or exploring on the fly. So it's a good opportunity And most companies now, particularly rare earth companies, are all using handheld XRFs to help drive their exploration on the fly. So Dreadnought's doing it. I'm pretty sure Kingfisher's doing it. I know PVW are doing it, who are working up in the Kimberley. I know Rare X are doing it in the Kimberley. So there's pretty much everybody.
It's a good use, and I think it's a good use of shareholder funds, because you're not just throwing money at going in and doing expensive drilling or some of the other things that you can be doing. This gives you a much quicker, but also starts to hone in, as you say, looking at the opportunity rather than just, it's a big area you've got, but you can hone it in a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So to put it into perspective, a handheld XRF, I'm not going to say the exact number, but they're in the order of $50,000 or $60,000 per unit. That's a lot of money, and we obviously don't want to go and spend that willy-nilly. But to put it into perspective, our copper flat soil sampling we've just done of 2,600 samples, if we were to analyse every single sample through a wet chemistry lab, that will cost us about $100,000 of assay, thereabouts. If we can cut that number of samples that need to go into the lab in half, and we'll cut it well below half, but even if we just cut it in half, we've paid for the entire unit outright. Yeah. So it's a little bit like using new technologies to save money. Yes, it costs you up front, but it also saves you an enormous amount going forward. And you've then got that asset to use on every other project as well, which is a real asset.
Yeah, and look, we're running out of time, but there's something really important here, because you mentioned earlier, you listed in February 2021. I'm talking to you in September 2022. You got a small market cap, I think about 10 mil.
Just under, yeah.
Just under 10 mil. But the important thing for me as well is 60 million shares on offer. So you kept a quite tight capital structure. Deliberate, Mike? Are you want to continuing with that? How are you going to be funding this going forward?
Yeah, funding it is always a challenge, and one of my shareholders, I get emails from him saying, "Stop talking about how much funds you've got, because that's not what you should be focusing on." And with all due respect to that particular shareholder, I disagree, because it's key to keep the capital structure tight, to keep funds and spend the funds as wisely as you can, and to maximise the bang for the buck with the funds we've got.
Yeah.
Now, I could be blazing away with an RC rig or diamond rigs here, there, or everywhere, and I'd be having to raise more funds, and it's like rolling the dice. You don't want to roll the dice too many times when you're just getting snake eyes all the time. You want to make sure that when you're rolling the dice, you're stacking the dice in your favour as much as you can. So doing as much work early before drilling to save money. And to protect shareholders. Now, protecting shareholders in terms of a capital structure, but also spending funds very wisely. And we deliberately do that. I deliberately keep the structure tight. We have not raised any money since listing. We haven't had to. At the end of last quarter, we still had $3.4 million in the bank that we are spending more aggressively now, because of as I mentioned earlier, the EM project, EM survey up in the Kimberley will cost about $250,000. We are spending the money. We are doing the exploration we said we were going to do, but I'm at the same time protecting the capital structure. I don't want to be running a company with 1 billion, 2 billion shares on issue. That doesn't help shareholders, particularly the shareholders I've got right now. So keeping it as tight as we possibly can, and making sure that we get maximum bang for our buck. That's really what drives me.
Look, we've run out of time, Mike. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be the winter update, and I'll get Mike back on in a few months' time. We'll do a summer update, but this is the winter update. Mike, 3 reasons people should sit up and take notice of you right now.
Look, I know everyone says this, but I'm going to say we've got a great team. And what I mean by that is not the board management. Yes, we've got a good board and management team. The 3 of us are very strong, but I've got a great team in the field. I've got a really experienced field supervisor, a really good geologist who's able to now go out there and drive the projects forward. That's the first part. I think the second part is the capital structure. But
Yeah.
to go to speak, I'll sound like a real estate agent now, but location. Now I'll change that a little bit to locations. We're not one-trick pony. We've got a really good project up in the Kimberley, which we're aggressively exploring. We've got a really interesting project in the Ashburton Gascoyne, which we're actively exploring. And we've got projects, the summer projects, as you mentioned, down south, the Black Hills project, for example, 30 kilometres from Julimar. So we've got really good projects, we've got a really good team, and we've got a really good capital structure to really drive the company forward. They're my three things for this one, Kerry.
Well, what a great way to finish it up, Mike. And it's been great to have you back on Small Caps. We look forward to an update in another few months about those summer projects. But for now, you're keeping very, very busy up there. Thanks so much for joining me on Small Caps today.
Great. Thanks very much, Kerry. And thanks for the listeners for watching.